Welcome back to the channel, guys. And we are at the Smithsonian Gardens that are just behind Smithsonian Castle, which is over there. We will take a closer look later on. And right now it is cherry blossom season in Washington, D.C. But the cherry blossoms have not reached peak bloom yet. That'll still happen maybe a few days from now. But what are in peak bloom are the magnolia flowers. And that is what we're going to focus on today. And right above here are the magnolias. These are called saucer magnolias because they're kind of shaped like saucers. And I'll give you a closer look right over here. So saucer magnolias, and there's the inside. So we're gonna take a bit of a walk around these gardens. And this is just an awesome time to be here. So right now it's the moment of magnolias, and very soon it will be the moment of cherry blossoms. However, there are cherry blossoms already in bloom, but it's not the peak time yet. But I'm going to show you a quick look at this building over here. So this is not Smithsonian Castle. Smithsonian Castle was the first of the Smithsonian buildings to be built. This one was the second. This is the Arts and Industries building, and it opened in the 1880s. At the very top there, it says 1879 when it was built, but it was in the 1880s that it opened. And basically what happened was the original Smithsonian building, which is the castle that we'll look at later, that housed the artifacts of the original museum. And then it started to grow a lot, and they needed more space. So they built this building, and this became known as the National Museum. And this statue in front of here, this is the second secretary of the Smithsonian Institute. And that's who this dude is. But let's take a walk around. So here's a little panoramic view, and that is where we were just standing. And we're gonna walk up this alleyway. And it is just beautiful out here right now. And the weather is great. It had been so cold up till today, really. About 2 weeks ago, I got back to Washington, D.C. from Colombia, the country. Medellin, Colombia, nice and warm. Shorts and t-shirt every day. Got back to D.C. and I was way underdressed for the cold winter weather. And I got sick the very next day. And I am still sick. Maybe you can hear it in my voice. But today is finally the first actual day that feels like spring. It's warm, it feels warm. We've got all these magnolias in bloom. And I am wearing my heavy coat that I bought in Patagonia on the Argentina side, just because I'm in such a cold weather mindset. And here we have a magnolia tree that has already started dropping its petals. You see on the ground? It's already started losing its petals. That's how quickly these trees just come and go with the flowers. And it's the same way with the cherry blossoms. They bloom and they're out for just a little while, and then they just fly away. At least these petals are staying on the ground because they're much larger. But these gardens are the best place in the whole city to see the magnolias. The magnolias are all over. There are other areas as well, but this is the best. Okay, so now we've come into the main garden area. And I will point out a few things to you here. That in the background, that is Smithsonian Castle, the one and only Smithsonian Castle, built in the 1850s. For about the first 30 years, it was the only Smithsonian building, and the museum artifacts were housed inside there. And these days it serves as a visitor center, but when I say these days, I mean that in a general sense, because it's actually been closed for a couple years, and it'll stay closed for another year or two more because they're doing some major renovations on the inside. So there is absolutely nothing going on the inside right now. So you've got your first Smithsonian building completely shut down. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but the Arts and Industries building that we were just at, it's also completely shut down. And since 2004, from 2004 until a few years ago, it was 100% just entirely closed. And then starting a couple years ago, they started doing temporary exhibitions in there. So they'll, I don't think there's anything in there at the moment, but they've had a few different exhibits that would have a run for maybe a month or a couple months, and then it would stop. And in those moments, you could go in and actually see the building. And the reason they only do that and not make it a permanent space is because the infrastructure is good enough to have shorter term exhibitions going, but it's not good enough to go the distance and be open year-round permanently. And it would be super expensive to take care of something like that, and nobody wants to do it. There had been talks about putting some of the new Smithsonians into that building. There's going to be a Latino museum and also a women's museum, and there had been talks about using that. But neither one of them want that building. They want their own brand new buildings, which is understandable. They don't want some old building on the mall that needs major work. So it just kind of sits there, and every now and then it opens up for something temporary, and who knows what's going to happen with it. But never fear, even though those two are closed, we've got a couple more Smithsonian buildings right here in the area. So this is the National Museum of African Art, not to be confused with the African American Museum of History and Culture that is walking distance from here. This is specifically about art from the continent of Africa. And you see they have a temporary exhibition called Benin Bronzes. And we pan around. Hey, what's that? It's another Smithsonian building. Let's go take a look. This is the National Museum of Asian Art. And here's a great, well, I'm gonna walk around this way, get behind these people. It's kind of tough because everyone's taking their pictures. And this marks the opening of the gardens behind us. The Enid A. Haupt Garden opened in 1987. That is L'Enfant Plaza back there, but that's for another day. And here we go. Take a look at this incredible view. So we've got Smithsonian Castle in the background and the gardens. We've got the magnolia trees on either side. And then up here, we have the National Museum of Asian Art. Let's take a quick look at that. This is also a Smithsonian. There are about 20 different Smithsonian museums. And up here at the top, you can see it says Arthur M. Sackler Gallery. Now, Mr. Sackler was a donor who donated a ton of money to have his name up there at the top. But the big problem these days is he's the owner of a big pharma company that's gotten into a lot of trouble because of opioid stuff. I'm sure you've heard about all these issues with the pharmaceutical companies and the opioid crisis and their involvement in it and responsibility and all that. So he's been, Mr. Sackler's been wrapped up in all of this stuff. And the Smithsonian is trying really to kind of refocus themselves on this title, calling themselves the National Museum of Asian Art, as opposed to the Sackler Galleries, which is what you used to always hear. But anyway, back to the fun, light stuff. we didn't really come out here to talk about the opioid crisis. We came to look at the Magnolias. This is a great shot right here. You've got this nice green tree in the front and the magnolia tree in the middle, and then in the back, just peeking out the back, you can see Smithsonian Castle. This is all pretty awesome.